my friend Scott Danner. Scott, welcome to the Gravity Podcast.
Brett, thanks for having me. I'm super excited to be here.
Yeah, good. So I'm excited to have you here and kind of dive into your story. As you know, we start at the beginning and want to hear kind of the full journey. So tell me a little bit about, who you were as a kid, some of your early memories, your family dynamics, anything that really jumps out from that very early stage of life.
Sure. I start my book out with an analogy to Simba, in The Lion King, when you're born and Simba's kind of held up over the edge of the mountaintop. And I think that's how I felt being born into an Italian Catholic family. I always say, if you want to be reincarnated, you want to be the firstborn grandson in an Italian Catholic family with 5 aunts and an uncle. So my Sicilian grandmother was an amazing influence, and my grandfather's strong faith and strength and family was also important. And so I was really a part of something bigger from birth. And I think that's always an important thing to mention. My mom was married and 19, had me, within 12 months, 11 months from that. So pretty quickly. And most of my aunts were still in the house. Like, they all lived in a very small home with 3 bedrooms and just an amazing family. And I think growing up, I grew up in a smaller home than that. But we had enough. We had, sometimes just enough, but my parents made sacrifices in their careers and their lives to better my sister and I. So I had 2 parts of life too, because I have a younger brother who's almost 14 years younger than me. And so my sister and I kind of call it part 1 and part 2, because when Derek came along, we had this part 1 where our parents were really young and struggling and building a life, broken down cars and riding a bike to work, and this big, huge family dynamic of the extended family. And my brother came for the next part of our lives, where my parents were more stable and they had a little bit more security. And, he's more of like an only child in some ways than us. And so, early memories, I remember just having amazing experiences at my grandmother's, having Italian Sunday dinner. I remember, having a strong father who worked multiple jobs. Discipline was very, very important to him. And I have an entrepreneur brain, so I think I got a lot of extra discipline along the way, because I like to be creative and think outside the box. And there was no answer that was good enough for me. Curiosity to me is something that I've come to love as I've gotten older. Something that I really see as one of the fundamental differences in success for so many people I know. And even just being independent in thought. And it started from a really, really young age. My mom was a paralegal from the time she was 15. My dad was a storeroom manager. So they just worked, and we grew up in a pretty decent environment. Financial aid allowed us to go to Catholic school. And so, that's a really special part of childhood to me, growing up in an environment where everyone wore a uniform, but we were completely different humans. My best friend lived in a mansion, and his mom had, awesome cars, and they sold real estate and had a mortgage business. And, I thought he was the silver spoon kid, Ricky Schroeder. And he always wanted to be at my house. I mean, literally wanted to be at my house, my 1,000 or less square foot home with a big backyard. And it's just the epitome of childhood and of how you kind of see the world so differently.
Yeah. Let me hop in there, Scott. That's really good context. And um, I'm curious, kind of in how much of this is kind of in hindsight, but in the moment, the experience of having that home, that even though it wasn't the big mansion, it was still this place that even your friends who had a lot more wanted to be. And I'm just imagining kind of family and just kind of the love and the laughter and the fun and the texture, of what it was like to grow up, in that environment. And I'm curious, like, what was that like for you, really? Like, what do you remember? and kind of who were you in all of that? Like, do you remember what kind of kid you were at that stage, in that experience in life?
Yeah. Um, I think in in uh in going back and looking at life in retrospect, it's very easy to like put a belief of what you think you were going through and what you think it was like, and your perception today. um I've always been pretty introspective. When I was just about 3 years old, I had a traumatic event that happened where we had a break-in, and we had a young babysitter who was in the home. And the intruder kind of chased me with a butcher knife. I'm giving you the quick version. Back to my room. I tried to protect the babysitter, so I actually hit him with a small baseball bat, and he chased me again. And there was a fight, and I was a part of all of it. And I remember seriously some pretty important parts of that. And I tell you this only because it wasn't until I started looking back on all that stuff at how integral that was in my life, and how many times um, I didn't feel super comfortable at home. I always had to be doing something. I always had to be out. I didn't feel like, when you're 3 years old and your world is blown up, there's a lot of trust issues that go with that, right? So I didn't understand. Everybody wanted to be at my house, and I felt like my house was almost dangerous at times and uncomfortable. And I didn't have the security that other people felt. Um, but my mom and dad did an unbelievable job of really allowing me to develop that and to feel protected. And they did everything that they could in those times. But I bring that up only because, to look back, I really didn't understand why everybody wanted to be at our house, except that my mom cooked amazing, and we had freedom to do what we wanted to do. My parents were really allowing us to be kids. As long as we followed the rules and were good kids, we could go where we wanted to go and ride our bikes. And I think sometimes the more you have, the more the less you allow your kids to maybe be as independent. And I had a very big blessing with the family atmosphere. So I
Mhm.
think that story is a good one to share with you, and it allows you to kind of get a glimpse of a kid who's probably super broken and confused and trying to figure out a lot of stuff that he really didn't understand at the time.
Mhm. And you said you were how old when that event happened?
Right about 3 years old.
Wow. I mean, just a baby. I mean, a toddler. I mean, that's crazy. And I mean, to remember it and kind of look back on it and yeah, we were just talking about this in my family about, kind of how much of your brain and body, kind of gets formed in those early years, the conditioning, that um, can certainly be changed, but, might kind of run unconsciously for, could be your entire life if you're not, really working on it. And so that is definitely a traumatic event and one for a child of that age. I would imagine it definitely, is something that you embodied in one way or another. You mentioned kind of needing to be out and active and doing stuff. Is that kind of your recollection of the impact, or what else? Kind of what other kind of impact did that have on you in those early years?
I think the impact was enormous, and I only have in maybe the last 5 to 10 years really understood some of the lines and how they've been drawn. Um, but a couple things that I think that are really important. Number one, I remember a lot more of the moments, but I don't remember. Like, there were things that happened that I don't understand because I was nowhere near a level of understanding. But I knew that he was hurting her, and I knew that he was using a knife, and I knew that there was some crazy stuff that wasn't right. When the cops came, I actually gave a description of the person, and a moment I remember really, really vividly is having blankets around me, and the babysitter not being able to speak and crying really horribly. But me and the cops having this conversation where they were like, you're going to help us find this person. You're a hero. You're somebody that's going to help this person that's upset and everyone in the neighborhood. And I think back to a lot of those things. My mom took me to a doctor, our family doctor, who basically said, listen, don't do therapy. Just talk about it every time he wants to talk about it. If he still has some level of brokenness, then obviously therapy is an option, but let's see what happens. And my mom was unbelievable. Every time I would bring it up, she would talk about it. But I think you internalize so much of that. And so when you talk about the impact, when I wrote my book, it was really interesting because they asked me a question that said, think about all the times you failed. And as a part of the preemptive writing phase, right? Think of a time that you failed. And I went back and was thinking of all these things. And I started to kind of think of struggles that I had growing up that I'd never really addressed. I didn't sleep very well. I was very, very, I need it when my parents would go to bed. That's almost when I couldn't sleep. So I had to fall asleep beforehand for years. I think my GI Joes for the first like 5 years of my life sat on my windowsill, hoping that they were going to protect me from anyone getting in that window. There was a lot of really interesting things that, thinking back, until I really started to dive back, I had just repressed and pushed down. And I had babysitters that would come to the house at 9, 10, 11 years old, maybe 8, 9, 10, because by 11 I was home alone all the time. And I would convince them that someone was outside. Like, every noise I heard, I was prepared. And so when you think about the impact, man, from the time I was 3 years old, I was looking for exit strategies. Every home I've ever lived in, I know every way to get in and out. I know how I'm going to protect my family. I know what happens if someone comes in. Like, I have rehearsed things that people have never thought of. And I think the way we leveraged it in the book is really, I have this protect and connect mentality. Protection is something that I find very important. I look at myself as someone that can help others and protect them. And because you experience something so crazy, you almost, when you leverage it for good and you've come out of it in a way that has made you stronger, it really is helpful to other people, because people have been through traumatic experiences and they've never shared the after effect. They've never talked about how nervous they were about things or how uncomfortable they felt in situations. So I'll
Yeah,
pause there.
it's an interesting thing. Yeah, no, it's great. Thank you for sharing. This is, a big part of why I love doing this podcast and why I am fascinated with the kind of full human journey. It's because you're describing yourself now today as a protector, as somebody who loves to kind of look out for people and plan and think ahead and be organized and think through strategies and scenarios. And, it would make total sense that as a toddler, to embody the need to protect somebody in that moment, that could become who you are in the world. And in your case, in a good way, right? Like, these traumatic events can keep us down or be incredible, platforms to build off of. And it can be both, too. I mean, it can be all of that. But in your case, you've certainly figured out how to make that who you are in a very positive way and productive way. And it's just cool. I mean, to hear that story.
Yeah, it's interesting because I when I wrote the book, I have so many family and friends and people that listened and to Audible or read it or different things, and nobody knew that about me. And they don't know that I had locks on my doors in college because I couldn't trust my roommates to lock the door at night, and I couldn't sleep if I didn't know that it was locked. Like, there's really simple things that still are a part of who you are, that I think when you share it with the world gives you so much more back. They trust you. There's a trust in trauma. And
Yeah.
when you've experienced things, look, I also was blessed in so many ways, because I experienced seeing trauma. I experienced, a protection breakdown, but I didn't have what happened to the babysitter happened to me. You know, there was always another person involved that I was thinking about, that my mom celebrated, that for years she would tell me all the good things that were happening in this person's life. And, you know, it was a part of our story. And I'm so that gratitude, maybe that gratitude allows me to also not see a lot of the things that kids see in their lives. When you grow up, you can find all the bad things your parents did. And I mean, at 21, 19, 20 years old, I was, justifying discipline. And I was in college, having conversations with friends of why I didn't mind if I were spanked when I was a kid. Like, I always found the positive in just about anything because it made me who I was. And I was so proud of who I was that almost goes back to that family dynamic of feeling like Simba. The confidence that was instilled in me at a young age helped me battle some of these things that I probably didn't even know I was battling, Brett, to be honest with you.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure. And then tell me a little bit more about your dad and the dynamic of him being kind of a disciplinarian. I don't know, imagining that, after something like that, that maybe there's a lot of kind of the opposite, where it's like, boy, this kid's been through a lot. Let's go easy on him. Sounds like, your dad was like, no, that's not the way we're gonna, do this. Tell me more about that.
Well, I think there's two things. Number one, I think my dad waited up all night. Hopefully he could in hopes that he could catch that person. um, you broke down a barrier of his house. And my father um, comes from a rougher upbringing in a very small room. I can't even say a home. Like, he had nothing. They had nothing growing up. So my dad was living an American dream to own a home and to have one car and all these things. So I think breaking down that barrier of protection was kind of it was a blow to my dad in protecting his family, which was a very, very fundamental thing. Um, I really respect so many things about my dad. I tell a story in the book about the way that I think and the way my dad thinks, and it'll kind of talk a little bit about discipline to your question. But I remember, walking home from another babysitter's house that my parents, we went to during the summers, and it was like 100 degrees outside. My dad is riding his bike to and from work with his lunch pail and his uniform, and he's sweating profusely. Like, everything is just bled through with sweat. And the vividness, I still see this. And I'm walking with my sister, and I'm kind of kicking rocks. And I just look at my dad with this mindset, like, what? There's got to be a better way, Dad. Like, we got to find a better way. But my dad was such a worker and such a soldier and such a driver that he just did whatever needed to be done, because that's how he grew up. And how he was living was so much better. And in my brain, I was trying to solve it. Like, I was like, we could find, there's got to be a car. Like, I'm just asking him questions like, what can we do? And to this day, he still laughs at me sometimes, because I've heard you talk about this, the never enough mentality. Like, my dad to my father, who had everything he ever dreamed of at a very, very young age, because his dreams were a lot smaller, they gave me a lot more capability to think bigger. And I never stopped. So I think the discipline often came when it just wasn't enough for me. And so, my dad was strong. He also worked a couple jobs. And I think you're tired when you're working that blue collar life, and you're dealing with everybody else telling you what to do every day. And my dad's just an amazing worker. He was loyal. Like, his father didn't have jobs. I think my grandfather told me he was a drinker, and he had 100+ jobs in the course of his life, he told me. And over his last couple of years. And to my father, just showing up to work every day was one of the steps that he was going to take to be a good man and a good husband and to be loyal.
Mhm.
And
Mhm.
so, these are things you get out of your family. But he was a strong leader. I had 5 aunts always around. I want you to understand this. Every time my dad would discipline me, I had 5 of my mom's sisters that were literally telling him he was wrong, that were like strong, independent, beautiful women
Yeah.
that, I mean, they babied the hell out of me. And
Yeah.
so, you know,
Yeah. That's good.
I'm lucky, man. I'm lucky. It's good
Yeah.
discipline in that way. You know what I'm saying?
I get you. Yeah. No, no, no. I get it. I mean, it's, we can maybe talk about this a little later, just the parenting aspect, it's tough. I mean, you talk about being tired, you talk about the jobs, you talk about, wanting to teach your kids certain lessons, make sure that they're getting what they need. It's complex, and you've never done it before, so and you got a lot of other shit going on too. So it can be hard. It can be hard. And you do the best you can, I think. And it sounds like, if you have the right intentions, that can go a long way. Tell me, we'll come back to that, but tell me a little bit about kind of how you started to advance, as you start to get into, early adulthood or high school, college, like who are you, and how does that start to kind of shape your life?
So I've always been a good talker, so much so that I found a letter during COVID that my mom had written me that said, words matter. Words are very important, and you are very special with your words. But when you use them the wrong way, they really hurt people. And I need you to understand
Mhm.
that that has to change in you, because I know you're struggling. I know you're changing. I know it's a new time. So we moved from that neighborhood and moved to a really nice suburb. And I went to a brand new school after being the king of the Catholic school. I went to freshman year in a brand new high school in a new district where I was nobody. And I played soccer. I didn't make the varsity team. They only had a varsity team. I didn't make it until my junior year. So my sophomore, and it was the best thing I had ever done. Like, I was better at that than anything else, and had never ever lost at any part of that, and just was continuously working to make it. So I had like the tales of 2 high schools. What I say is, like, the first part of my high school experience was me trying to figure it out and make friends. The second part was, like, immediately upon making the varsity team and starting games, that I had new friends, new opportunities. I found, a really fun place, friends that I still have today that are some of my best friends in the world. Um, I went to I wasn't going to go to college. My mom actually filled out all my applications for me, but 2 applications. I said I wanted to go to Radford or Virginia Tech at the time in Virginia. And but I didn't think we could afford it. I had a really good grasp on money as a young kid. I watched my mom write checks with notes that said, hey, cash this Monday, things that I knew. My mom was young and I was young, and I always joke with her, we grew up together. And so
Mhm.
I was a lot of times I feel like one of her advocates, somebody that she relied on and leaned on. And so I thought I was helping them by not wanting to go. And she refused, filled out applications, told me how I didn't need to go in the military, that she could figure out a way. I got a scholarship to go to one school. I got into both schools I applied to, and I literally was thinking this small. I was going to be a teacher or a cop. That was the world that I was living in. I thought being a teacher got me a pension, and being a cop got me that feeling that I had thought my whole life, like the FBI was my dream, because those men that had been a part of my life, they had protected, they had helped, they had saved. Like, that was fundamental for me. Um, and Majored in criminal justice. Why did I love it? Because I wanted to understand the mind of the criminal. I wanted to understand how to help people. Went to work for the Attorney General's office right out of college in crime prevention as assistant director. Got to have an awesome job with the AG of the state of Virginia. I was in an appointed position, which I lost a couple years later when a new AG came in and there was a new administration, and my guy didn't win the governor's office. So I had one of my great aunts, like, not great aunt, but a wonderful aunt of mine, Paulette, say, you would be a great financial advisor, Scott. It's just in your DNA. I think you should apply with this company that I'm working with. And I was like, no, I won't. I don't know how to do that. And I'm afraid. What if it's not for me? And she goes, well, what if you just learn how to manage your own money better? And I thought, that's the best thing anyone's ever said to me. I could absolutely learn to do that. And I need to learn to do that. So I applied. Literally 2 weeks later, I was hired. A couple months later, I'm knocking on doors and cold calling and building a business from zero. And, that kind of led me to where I am today. That's the quick version of the
Yeah,
update.
yeah. Well, let me back up a little bit because I'm fascinated with kind of the criminal justice and kind of the mind of the criminal and going into that. I mean, seems like that would be a pretty obvious connection to that early traumatic event. At the time, were you connecting those dots, or,
Oh, yeah.
how are you thinking about, kind of wanting to dedicate your career to that work?
Yeah, look, man, I didn't touch a drug all through high school. I studied what the FBI was looking for. Every time an FBI person I met, I asked them about the hiring process. This was at like 14. I mean, I knew what I wanted to do. Um, but my sister's best friend was, somebody that I was, really interested in, and we are married today. But at the time when I was in college, being in the FBI meant I was going to move to wherever the heck they wanted me to move, and I was going to be theirs. And I just didn't see that for my path. I chose a different path for me. And so studying something, loving something I found very early could be a hobby. It could be something that I still was engaged in. Um, I was on a crime prevention task force. I was like, all through my financial advisory career, I have had a connection to either mentorship, like the Boys and Girls Club, or criminal justice organizations, because it's my passion. It's something it's a passion of mine. Um,
Mhm.
so I knew that was
Talk to me
something
a
that.
little bit.
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, yeah, I got it. Yeah, thank you. And talk to me a little bit about kind of, um, in the financial advisory world, you are looking out for other people in a big way, right? Now, I mean, some people might see it differently, but the way I look at it is like I'm really trusting this group, this individual to really look out for me, that they are going to be honest, have high integrity, really be paying attention and doing the best they can. I mean, it seems like, again, like this isn't really a total shock that you're in a profession where you are a protector. You are really responsible for being strategic and thinking things through and really looking out for other people. Maybe not in the same way as a FBI agent, but it's still very much an important thing for people to manage their money.
Yeah, at the AG's office, I was in a lot of crime prevention areas and was aware of identity theft. And I was dealing with a lot of people that were being taken advantage of. And in the career that I chose, there's a lot of people that are taken advantage of. There are a lot of people that are looked at in the world that maybe they don't look at the profession all the time as the best. And it's one of those things where people are less trusting because it's their money. People get divorced for, two main reasons: sex and money. And, money is a big problem in families. And so, honestly, I think I found the connection between being authentic, and just sharing of myself with everybody that I ever connected with. My story is your story, and I want to understand your story, and we connect on a different level. I built relationships, which is something I was always really open to and connected to. And that'll made the money so easy. Like the other parts were easy. When you understand the human behind the goal or the dream or the financial well-being, like it was so much easier and better to help them. And so the protecting side was absolutely fundamental, Brett. It was 100% how I thought. And I always want to be different in whatever space I'm in. Like I felt like I could make a difference.
Yeah. Tell me a little bit about how that's evolved for you. I mean, I know your business has changed. You're, doing a lot more than just, financial advising. And I know you've been starting to get into the tech space and, tell me just kind of, the kind of current, view of what your business is like, and maybe talk a little bit about kind of where you see things headed.
Yeah, I spent 15 years at a large financial firm, and I'm very grateful for the upbringing. I had all these great experiences and leadership and mentorship and things that really fundamentally gave me an unbelievable foundation. But I'm an entrepreneur, and my brain has too many ideas in it a day to sit on one thing and function on someone else's time. Like I can't do it. I have to create new relationships, new opportunities. And if something is better and I know it, I can't stay in a place where I know that I could make it better. And so in 2016, I started Freedom Street Partners with a couple of partners, and we kind of developed something that we wanted to believe was bigger than ourselves. And we really wanted it to be life first, life wealth optimization, but life first. And that meant there were different facets of that. That meant getting out into the world and actually speaking to people and doing YouTube and videos and different things that I hadn't been able to do in the past. It meant that creating joint ventures and collaboration with people that are doing different unique things in the space that could help our clients live a full life, not just a financially strong life. And I think I also had spent a lot of time mentoring when I was at the previous firm. I started a wine festival in almost 13 years ago. And honestly, I loved doing the wine festival sometimes more than I loved doing my job, because I was making a change in the community, something I know I know you really value and something that you do every day in your career. But the impact I was making, the money we were giving away to charities, like I just felt like my platform was rising and I should be doing more if I had this capability. And so all of that came together, and that's really where I'm at today. We've built a business where we're in 7 states, and we specialize in helping financial advisors whose average age is 62 years old with a succession plan, with coaching and consulting on the next step, the next chapter, making continuity plans for their clients and buying their practices. And so that's kind of one facet of what we're doing. And so I get to mentor the advisors in the next chapter. I get to teach the newer ones and the younger ones the way that I feel it should be done from the beginning. And I get to really embed myself in the communities that I serve and make a difference in ways that really makes it feel meaningful. So I'm not just, I want to work, but I love to work and I love work, but life is way bigger than work. And so I want it all to kind of mesh together in this beautiful symmetry.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's, a big passion of mine is how life and work, can be integrated into one, and how you can really take all the things that you're personally passionate about and include them in your work, and it sounds like you've done that, really beautifully. But let's kind of go back a little bit. I am curious about kind of your family today and the kind of dynamics, you being a husband and father and having, had the role models that you've had and the experiences you've had. Talk a little bit about kind of life for you today.
Yeah. I feel so blessed. I married my sister's best friend, who is, marrying the right person at a young age is quite a quite a great decision on so many different levels. I married a partner who we raise our kids together, and somebody that partnership is never perfect, but it's definitely the greatest thing I've ever experienced, and it's made me stronger. I always tell the story. I think I broke up with her like 27 times on the phone because I didn't like the result of the conversation, and I was dramatic, and she would laugh at me, hang up, call me the next day and be like, "Are you over yourself yet?" Like, I needed someone to allow me to heal. Like, I needed someone to allow me to be imperfect. And so the very imperfect version of myself has become a much more polished version. And my wife was there to help me build that. And so my life is, I feel very blessed. I have two boys that are, going to be 13 and 16. They play a ton of soccer. My only experience in Columbus is having gone up to Columbus for 5 to 7 weeks when my son played with them in their U12 academy for a big Adidas tournament. And I loved the city, loved probably the stuff that I saw that you have done in the city, that was just super cool in that short north area, and all the
Mhm.
the Ohio State kind of vibe. Loved it. Loved the whole experience.
Yeah.
My boys are really a lot of my life. I do a ton of stuff for them. Um, I have an entrepreneur mindset, which sometimes is, my wife is such a grounder. She's my grounding. Like we could sit by the pool every weekend and in a summer day, and have a Saturday dinner and have a couple friends over and never ever leave that setting. And I can't do that. Like I have to be moving still. And so
Yeah.
we
Yeah.
ground each other. I stretch her comfort zone to go and travel and do different things. And she helps me to pull back and relax when I need to. And from an upbringing side, which I know your question is probably asking, I'm as imperfect as my parents are. My passion and my drive can sometimes also be a passion and drive that's intense, and I work really hard at being calm and relaxed, and helping to cope with, the pace of life that I run at is fast. And it's like driving on the interstate. When you have to slam on your brakes going 80 miles an hour, it's a big difference than slamming on your brakes going 30. And so
Mhm.
I spend a lot of time today doing things to help me not start going 80 from like the beginning of the day and end going 80. Like, I build up slow, I meditate, I go in my infrared sauna, I pray, I have a very slow start to my day. I build up, I kind of have a crescendo, a peak, and I work my way down as the day goes on. And that allows me to be a better father, a better husband, and more present in my life. But I'd be lying to you if I didn't say that that's probably one of the things that I work on every single day. And my kids will be on someone's show, 20 years from now, saying, that dad was pretty imperfect and dad was great, but he also had these things that maybe I wish he would have been better at.
Yeah, I think that's great, to highlight. There's a lot there that I am, kind of curious about or happy to hear. We are imperfect as parents, as human beings, and I think that there's often, not enough acceptance for that imperfection, and that that generally speaking, I don't know, maybe I shouldn't even say generally speaking. I know, and my belief is that people are doing the best they can, even if they're doing a lousy job. Like, I just don't believe that they um, really want to be doing a lousy job. It's just all they've got. And I think there's certainly, as you get older, and for me as a parent, there's a much greater appreciation of all of that. That I'm imperfect. My parents were imperfect. I'm an imperfect husband. I'm an imperfect leader, and I am doing my best. I promise you. And I keep trying to get better. And, what I love hearing, because I was kind of intrigued with this, like, go hard, go fast, work, right? Perform, success, more, right? There's some drive there, but you have learned, which I think this is really huge, how to take care of yourself too, beginning and a day, right? Meditation practice, infrared sauna. I mean, these are things that I also love in my life. And having morning routine, having evening routine, having various outlets. Like, Dan Sullivan says, like, you can't drive the car if you haven't charged it first, right? So that morning, I think is really important to emphasize, because people will hear, especially young people, they will hear hustle, grind, work hard. And you might have to do that at certain points in your life more than others, but you cannot do it for the long run if you don't have some real self-care practice throughout your day.
Yeah, you break. I mean, I think I ran from a place of fear in the beginning of my life and career. I wanted to have more, provide more, protect my family, my extended family, provide more for mom and dad, my kids, my sister is a single mom with two kids. Like, there was a drive from a place of fear. And I think what happens is you can't, I'm a sprinter. And so I've always been a sprinter. I was a striker at on a soccer field, and I like to sprint and rest. When you actually can look at yourself and say, wait a second, maybe there's some rhythm to that. That's what you're really great at, Scott. You can sprint, but you have to make time to repair and rebuild and relax, and then you can sprint again. Because I'm always going to be sprinting in some capacity. I'm just going to create more breaks in between, and that allows me to really focus on a better version of myself. I mean, but I would say I've learned and I'm learning. So,
Yeah.
I'm nowhere near how great I'm going to feel 10 years from now, when I feel like I've really honed in on that mentality. And these are all parts of it, but I do love that point, man. I what a great way. COVID was a great, horrible thing, but a great thing for me, because it slammed on my brakes and there was nothing I could do, and except relax. I started reading scripture every morning. I mean, I was like, hey, there's nothing. I can't rush to the gym. I started becoming very self-motivated. Not, and I was always self-motivated, but even more so. But I was slow. I read the Wall Street Journal almost cover to cover every morning. I'd read articles every day, but I'd never read the whole thing. Like, all these things just changed, and I liked it. And I like it
Yeah.
more than the pace before.
Mm. Yeah, I agree. I think a lot of us are in that boat. If you're healthy and you're financially stable, and you're used to really running at a fast pace and being on the run all the time, traveling. For me, it was just like you described, an incredible opportunity for me to shift. And I am curious about this. This kind of part of you that's been with you from an early age, that is about really performing at a high level, and now, as an adult, working hard, creating the life that you've created for yourself, doing all the things that you do. I'm wondering, kind of with that, COVID slam on the brakes, and with the kind of change of pace by taking care of yourself morning and evening, and like really kind of starting to shift a little, how you feel about like the long run, the big picture. Like, do you see yourself continuing to maybe even taper off with the amount of like work that you're doing? Do you see yourself sustaining that forever? There's this kind of debate, a little bit even within inside strategic coach, where Dan will say the retirement is the grim reaper. I don't know if I totally buy into that, but I do subscribe to the idea of like loving your life and your work, and that being fuel to carry you late into life. Tell me a little bit about like how you see this starting to continue to shift for you, or maintain, kind of where are you headed with it?
A couple of big things come into my mind. Number one, I don't ever see myself not doing something. Like, I mean, I would not be happy in my day if I didn't have purpose to it. And to me, purpose is serving others, period. So if I'm helping others, my give a shit factor is so high on everything that it can be a problem. But when I get engaged and involved, I really feel purpose behind that. We're hosting a team dinner for my son's high school soccer team, and I'm making homemade spaghetti, meatballs, and I want to have like a whole experience. And my wife wanted to get Texas toast. I'm like, you can't serve Texas toast with my sauce. And she's like, you take everything to the highest level, Scott. And it's true. I mean, it's just true. But
Yeah.
I don't think I'm going to repress that part of me. But I will tell you this. Um, I believe in loving the journey a lot more today. And I think that, it's sort of like when you talk to a high school kid and they're having a relationship problem. And you see it so clearly. Like, you look back and the blueprint's all there. You know what the problem is, you know how to fix the problem. It's all written, and it's from experience, but you can't put that person back in your space. They have to experience it on their own, and you can hopefully share it with them, and they might apply some of those things. I look at life like that. Like, I look back and I'm not upset that I didn't know everything that I know now, but I do know enough now to enjoy the darn ride a little bit more and stop focusing
Yeah.
on this future version of me and start focusing more on the current version of me and the presence and the day. And today I'll leave at 3 o'clock. I'll go take my son to a soccer training, a private coaching training, that I've said yes to because he wants to do it, that my wife thinks is too much. And but why one of the reasons I do it is it forces me to break in a day that I normally wouldn't break. Like he becomes the priority. We have a great conversation. We have time alone. It's so much bigger to me, but I love those moments, and that's the
Yeah.
ride.
Yeah. 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 It's great. It's a good ride. And I love the kind of, being present and not, kind of focusing on that future self. Scott, this has been great. I love hearing your stories. Tell me just, kind of wrap up, I don't know, final thoughts or anything that's kind of coming up for you or that you want the audience to hear. We'll make sure they know how to get a hold of your book and get in touch with you. But yeah, just any final thoughts that you have.
I think as we get older, final thought is you are where you're supposed to be. Right where you are right now is where you're supposed to be. And the more you look back on where you've come from, the more you can connect the dots that it's the right path. Everything kind of lines up for the right way. And that kind of ties in the trauma, it ties in the early childhood, it ties in our conversation in a way to me that has always been something fundamental in me. And anybody can find me at scottdanner.com. And I'm starting a YouTube channel. It's brand new. And I put out a lot of conversations and thoughts about things just like this, because I believe the world needs a little bit more positivity. They need a little bit more belief, a little bit. People need to hear good things, positive news, positive, juice for the world, energy. And so I really love doing that. And those are the types of things, but Googling my name will get you everything you want to see. And you could buy the book on Amazon. It's super simple.
Awesome. Scott, thanks so much. It's great to be with you and to hear your story. And I know our audience will love it. And yeah, keep up the great work. It's good
Thanks for
good
having
to
me,
know
man. I'm
you.
super, super happy to have been here. Thank you so much.